Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Hope you had a great day so far. I was thinking about what to talk about, and I came up with a top 10 things to do, things you should check off before you pull the trigger on your job and decide to tell your boss sayonara, that you're quitting, you're not coming back, you're decided to move on to retirement. So most of us make it about the finances. Do we have enough? How much is that? You know, we're so focused on the money. And retirement money is definitely important, but it may not be the most important thing. You have to also focus on your emotional well-being, your physical well-being, and just, how stable you are. Are you ready for this next adventure in your life? So my top 10 list of things you want to do before you tell your boss that you're not coming back in 2 weeks. So this is what I would do. It's just my opinion. So at number 10, know your F number. And I've mentioned what that F number is. For me, it's the financial freedom number, what I require for my retirement, the kind of retirement I want. And what your F number or your financial freedom number is, that is exclusively yours, not someone on YouTube telling you what your F number should be, not a neighbor or a coworker or a family member saying how much they think you need in retirement. That's something you have to come up with. So it's important to know what that F number is for you. So that's number 10 of the things you want to do before you turn in your 2-week resignation letter. So coming up with that financial freedom number, you're going to want to know, how much are you spending now annually, and how much do you think you'll spend in your retirement? Because in retirement, for most of us, we'll probably spend more at the beginning of retirement, called your go-go years, where you're probably most active, probably taking, these big trips, could be expensive trips, where you're just, go, go, go. So you're going to want to know, what you're going to need month to month, year to year in those go-go years. And the next thing is just, how much is retirement going to cost you? What's your expenses look like? Do you have a mortgage? Do you have a car payment? What are your expenses? So be very accurate about that. So that's another part of knowing your F number. And also, it's not just about the expenses you'll have, but what about the expenses that will disappear? The expenses you have now or you had. Could be a mortgage, could be a car payment. Maybe you'll finish off those payments, and now that's something you won't have to worry about in retirement. So you have to also factor that in. So just have to remember, retirement isn't about replacing your income. It's about funding your lifestyle in retirement. So that's what you really have to focus on when I talk about this F number, which is your financial freedom number. So that was number 10. So at number 9, it is to eliminate or reduce major debt. So if you have, mortgage, credit card payments, medical bills, vehicle notes that you're having to pay down on, the less debt you carry into retirement, the better off you're going to be. The more you'll be able to focus on what's important as far as, day-to-day cost in your retirement life. So those are things that are very important. And, the more flexibility you have when it comes to the money you have in retirement, the better off you're going to be. So especially, going into early retirement, you're going to want to have that flexibility just in case the situation changes. The economy, inflation continues to increase, the stock market crashes. Who knows, what might happen. So, you want to have that flexibility, built into your retirement plan. And just remember that, every dollar that doesn't go to pay debt can be going towards your freedom number. So remember, this kind of plays into far as number 10. So the less debt you have going into retirement, the more flexibility you'll have with your retirement. So that's number 9. And now number 8, build a healthy cash reserve. And what I'm talking about there is that a lot of retirees, especially early in retirement, they just miscalculate what those expenses are going to be in retirement. So that's what this is. You want to build a healthy cash reserve. Make sure you have plenty of money to get through 2 or 3 years of a bad economy, or maybe you just have bills that just come up that you weren't expecting. You need a new roof, a new AC, who knows? But definitely have a cash reserve that you'll be able to pull from to be able to use that towards those expenses. So this fund would be for, emergencies. Could even be like your travel fund. You never know. Maybe you go somewhere and you have an accident or you break something, and then you have to have like an emergency evacuation. That can be very expensive, especially if you don't have the right insurance when you're traveling. So you want to have that cash reserve on hand to get through that, to weather that storm. So just be wary of, unforeseen or unexpected expenses in retirement. So that is number 8. And the key point is that, the cash, it can definitely provide you, serious peace of mind. If you know you've got that kind of money available and something comes up, you'll be fine. It may not be easy, could be difficult, but you'll get through it because you've got the funds set aside for that. So just remember, you don't want to blow your nest egg, the one you've been, packing away for decades on the first few years of your retirement. So you definitely want to plan for that. So um, you don't want to have to find yourself having to go back to work after just a couple of years when you've had to spend on expenses that were unforeseen and you didn't have the cash reserves to take care of it. So you don't want to go back to having to work at like be a Walmart greeter or something like that, like my dad would say. So that was number 8. Number 7, know where your health care is coming from. And what I mean from that is that, you know, definitely have your health care covered. Whether you've a veteran, you've got VA benefits or, ACA benefits, maybe your spouse is still working and they can cover your health care in retirement. Could also be with Medicare, but you're going to have to be 65 in order to qualify for that. So definitely have your health care covered. Know who's going to provide you for that, especially if you're under the age of 65. So healthcare, it's something that a lot of people, they just don't realize how expensive healthcare can be, especially as you get older. So you definitely want to be prepared for that. So that was number 7. Number 6 is, you really have to have a reason to retire. Pan around so you have another look at the lake here. It's so peaceful. Definitely not AI generated. So, it's not just about quitting your job or getting away from a boss you can't stand or customers that just drive you crazy. But you have to be retiring to something. So that's what number 6 is. So, could be travel, could be volunteering, um, maybe taking care of, family members, hobbies, new projects you want to, start or, you know, complete if you'd started them, before you retired. And also focusing on your own health. That is something I'm doing and will continue to do into retirement and through retirement is focus on not just my mental health, but my physical as well as my, ability to get around as far as being uh, mobile. I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, where I want, and for as long as I want. So you definitely have to take care of your health in retirement. So the key point is that, the happiest retirees, they have a purpose. And it wasn't just to quit the job or end their career, but they were retiring to something. So that's something you should really figure out before you give your 2 weeks notice. And number 5, test drive retirement. Try it out. It's like going in, thinking you want a certain car or truck. Try it out, take it off the showroom lot and see how it rides, And retirement's like that too. Try it out if you can. For myself, it's been a challenge because of the work I do. It's hard to get, enough time off to really try out the retirement. But mentally, I've been trying it out for a while now. Um, so definitely test drive your retirement. Could be going on a long vacation, a sabbatical if your employer will allow you to take one, or even just reducing your hours, working less and not necessarily quite quitting where you show up and you don't do anything or, you're not 100% in it, but just taking the time you have, if you have vacation time, uh, sick time, and using that to kind of figure out, test drive retirement before you pull the plug on your job. So that is number 5. So number 4 is, get your health in order. And that's what I'm doing right now. I'm seeing doctors, I'm getting labs. I'm just making sure I am 100% A-OK to be able to turn in my 2 weeks notice. So, retirement, it's a dream, but it requires your health, both mentally and physically. So you want to make sure you're able to do it. You don't want to put in your 2 weeks notice, get into retirement, find out you've got all these health issues that you have to deal with. So, can you walk? Are you comfortable walking? Can you breathe? Are you having struggles breathing? So you have things you want to get checked out. And can you travel? Maybe you're just not up to it. So you definitely want to get your health checked out and be able to stay active throughout your retirement years. So the key point from number 4 is that, health, money, you could always make more. Health, that's something that's going to matter more and more the longer you're in retirement. So definitely take care of your health, see your doctor. If you have specialists, make sure you have appointments with them, get checked out, and kind of go from there. So that is number 4. So definitely get your health checks in order, and not just, medical. Also, if you need to see a dentist, especially if you have good insurance, that can definitely be a lot less expensive. if you do that before you retire while you still have your employer's health benefits. So definitely take care of that. And for number 3, this is important. And for number 3, it's, discuss your decision with people that, are going to be there in your retirement, especially if you have a spouse, a partner, a significant other, family members. Get them on board, let them know what's going on, that you're, at this juncture in your life where you're ready to pull the plug on work and start enjoying your retirement that you've spent decades working towards. So definitely get them on board, because retirement, it's going to change a lot of things, especially your relationship, whether it's, with your spouse or even your kids. So you want to get them on board, let them know, don't leave them in the dark. So that's a major thing you want to do before you pull the plug on work. So, make sure you have the expectations aligned, with what you want to do. So that is number 3. And now number 2, design your perfect day in retirement. What are you going to do on a Tuesday? Most people, we spend all this time planning retirement. We don't plan the daily parts of retirement, the Sunday to Sunday. We think of retirement as a never-ending weekend. But you're going to have, up days and probably down days as well. And what are you going to do from day to day? So you want to figure that out. So the details matter. Figure out what you're going to do on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It doesn't have to be every week, for months on end, but at least have an idea what you plan to do, in retirement from day to day. And now finally for number 1. So, decide what you're retiring for, and why are you waiting to retire. So number 1 is decide what you're really waiting for. Why haven't you already retired? You've got the finances, you've gone through that checklist of 9 other items on your list. So why haven't you decided to retire? And what are you waiting for? So, do you need more money, more security? Fear is a factor. You want to reduce your risk. Or is it just out of a habit where you're just used to working and you think, well, I can just, work another month, work another year, and you just end up moving those goalposts. So, figure out why you haven't retired. And that's probably the most important thing on this list. So that's number 1. So deciding what you're really waiting for to retire. So, at some point you have to make that decision, and only you can make that. But definitely, have your family, your significant other on board, aligned with what you want to do in this next phase of your life called retirement.
Yeah, can't fool flexing cause they know I got the sauce. Got the presence on me, I can't ever take it off. That's why I came, country boy stepping, yeah, I'm